you scroll through social media and what do you see? A fire hose of business advice, right? Everyone's got a shortcut or a secret to getting rich. But here's the thing, most of it is just plain wrong. And for an entrepreneur, following that bad advice, well, that can be the difference between making it big and just becoming another statistic. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's talk about this number for a second. 90%. That is the brutal reality of the startup failure rate. And a huge reason why is because so many founders are running on myths and terrible, outdated advice. So in this explainer, we're going to cut through the noise. We're tackling 10 of the absolute worst pieces of advice that are still floating around out there.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to look at the myths around your product, your funding, and even your own mindset as a founder. Then we'll dive into some major operational blind spots. And at the end, we're going to piece it all together into a new framework for actually succeeding.
First up, let's talk about the product itself. This is ground zero for some of the most destructive myths out there, ideas that can kill a company before it even has a chance to get off the ground.
Myth number one, this one's a classic. It's a great line from a movie, but as business advice, it's terrible. The fantasy is that a truly brilliant product is all you need. Well, remember Quibi? They raised $1.75 billion, built a super slick product, and completely collapsed in just 6 months. They built it, all right, nobody came.
So here's the reality check. Your product and how you get it to people, your distribution, they are two sides of the exact same coin. You absolutely have to find out if people want what you're selling before you build the whole thing. Don't just sit back and wait for customers to find you. You got to go out and get them.
Myth number 2 is the more is better trap. This idea that you just need to keep cramming in more and more features to make your product great. What it really does is create a confusing mess. Take Google Wave. It tried to be email and chat and document sharing all at once. People had no idea what to do with it, and it just fizzled out.
Which leads us to myth number 3. You have to build for everyone. No, no, no. The smart move is to do the exact opposite. Do less, but do it way better. You start with what's called a minimal viable product, or MVP. It's a simple version that solves one core problem, and solves it really, really well. Then you listen to your actual customers and build from there. And being specific pays off. Personalizing for a niche audience can boost your return on investment by 200%.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about money. The headlines are always full of these massive, flashy funding rounds. It makes it seem like the main goal of any startup is to just raise millions of dollars. But honestly, that whole narrative is incredibly misleading.
And that brings us to myth number 4, this idea that you have to chase venture capital money to have a shot. That's a huge risk. Taking that money puts you under immense pressure to grow at an insane pace, chase metrics that don't matter, and you could even end up losing control of your own company. You have to remember, capital is just a tool. It's not the prize.
And all that funding, it's no guarantee of success. I mean, look at this. A study found that 65% of those billion-dollar unicorn companies were still not profitable. Compare that to bootstrap giants like Mailchimp. They grew to a $700 million revenue stream without taking a dime of VC money. You know why? Because the best funding in the world always comes from your customers.
All right, so we've covered the product and the money. Now let's turn inward and talk about the founder. Because your own mindset, the one that's been shaped by all these stories and myths, can either be your greatest asset or your biggest liability.
Myth number 5. Always trust your gut. Look, intuition is powerful, but relying on it blindly is basically just gambling. The spectacular collapse of WeWork is the ultimate cautionary tale here. The founder had this grand vision, this gut feeling, but he completely ignored the data that showed the business wasn't profitable. And he drove it straight into a failed IPO and billions in losses.
The right way to think about this is that your gut and your data are partners. They're not enemies. You use your intuition to come up with an idea, a hypothesis, but then you have to test it with real data and small experiments. That's how you sharpen your gut over time, so it becomes a truly reliable tool.
Myth number 6. This one might just be the most seductive of them all. It's the whole overnight success story. The reality is, entrepreneurship is almost never a get-rich-quick scheme, and believing that lie just sets you up for some crushing disappointment and ultimately burnout.
The data tells a much different story. The average time for a startup to have a major exit, like an IPO, is 8 to 10 years. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And you know what?
It's a marathon you probably shouldn't run by yourself. Which brings us to myth number 7, the myth of the lone wolf founder. Fact is, 77% of successful startups have co-founders. Building a company is a team sport.
Okay, for our last section, let's talk about those operational blind spots, the outside threats that everyone tells you to ignore, right up until the moment they completely destroy your business.
Let's just knock out 2 big myths at once here. Myth number 8, a good business plan guarantees success. Yeah, tell that to Kodak. They had plenty of plans, but they failed to adapt when the world went digital. A plan is a guide, not gospel. And then there's myth number 9, don't worry about competition. Blockbuster famously dismissed Netflix as a joke, and we all know how that story ended. You have to study your rivals so you can outthink them.
And now for our final and maybe most urgent operational myth. Myth number 10, that security is someone else's problem. Take a look at this number, $10.5 trillion. That's the projected annual cost of cybercrime by 2025. This isn't just another business expense, it's an existential threat.
See, cybersecurity isn't just some boring IT issue anymore, it is a core business survival issue. And since a whopping 88% of data breaches are caused by simple human error, it is absolutely everyone's responsibility. In today's world, treating security as an afterthought is like building a bank and forgetting to install a vault.
So, we've busted 10 big myths. We've seen how these seductive shortcuts can be so dangerous. So now what? Let's put all the good stuff together and build a new, smarter, more resilient way of thinking about how to build a business.
This new mindset really comes down to 3 key pillars. Instead of trying to be fast, be slow. Be patient. Build something that lasts. Instead of just running on gut instinct, be smart. Use data, test your ideas, and be ready to adapt. And instead of trying to be a lone hero, be strong. Build resilient teams, solid systems, and real security. That's the mindset that actually wins in the long run.
At the end of the day, success isn't about finding some magical shortcut. It's about discipline, it's about data, and it's about creating real value for people. So the final question is for you. After all this, which piece of bad advice that we've talked about today are you finally ready to leave behind?